we need to factor that in. The solution is not to remove everyone. The solution is to come up with a system where we can benefit from people
Mm.
here, and a system that's fair that factors that in. I think we need to think long term. How can the United States prosper and benefit? How can we nurture talent and opportunities so that the United States reaps the benefits several years
Mm.
from now?
Welcome. Today's guest is someone whose work touches the very core of what it means to belong. She's an immigration attorney with over 12 years of experience and the founder of Khalique Law, where she leads with strategy, compassion, and a powerful sense of justice. From helping families stay together to guiding extraordinary individuals through the maze of immigration law. Somaya Khalik brings legal knowledge and cultural insight to the table. She's a proud daughter of immigrants, fluent in Bengali and Spanish, and a graduate of Barnard College and Hofstra Law. And today, she's making history as our very first legal expert on the podcast. We'll talk about how immigration law took shape under the U.S. Constitution, how it both protects and excludes, and what that means for real people. We'll also explore the big question: how does the law decide who truly belongs in America? You do not want to miss this. Let's get into it.
That was so great.
Somaya, how are you?
I'm great, great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to do this podcast with you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Just to give our audience some context behind our relationship, both professional and personal, I've gotten to work with you as you try to build your law practice and reach more people and provide more help. And I was just so impressed by the depth of knowledge you had as a legal expert, right? Because me growing up, my perception of immigration attorneys were really more just the administrative aspect of getting you, and then having these in-depth conversations with you, I started realizing, wow, there's more to this. There's a mechanism, there's a philosophy, there's a theory behind this. And I said, I just have to have you on this podcast just to have this candid conversation. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. You will now be our official legal expert when it comes to this
Okay.
realm. And
Uh-huh.
I guess just to start off,
Yeah.
like how, you know, we never learned this in school. How is immigration shaped into the Constitution?
So, Rod, immigration law has a deep history. The first thing that you need to know is immigration law was put into the Constitution, and the Constitution gave Congress the power to regulate immigration. And currently, right now, immigration law is federal, but this wasn't something that just was since the inception of time. There were various steps that needed to be taken. So, back in the day, in the 1700s, there
Hmm.
were states that were implementing immigration laws. And even though Congress had the power to regulate only naturalization at that time, these states were creating other laws, which was creating a conflict in how states were defining rules and laws for immigrants to follow. And that's very, very important, right? Because you have 50 different states and a country, and people are following different laws. And the only thing that federal government, was regulating was naturalization.
What is
So,
naturalization?
naturalization is the process to becoming a US citizen if you
Ah,
were not born over here. So now we know that that's the distinction, right? Naturalization, you're not born here, you go through this legal process so you can become a US citizen. And as you were saying, immigration law encompasses so many more things than just administrative things and just filling out forms. It's not just becoming a citizen, there are a variety of other things that come into play. Um, you know, what are the different ways in which you can get a green card? What are the steps before you become a citizen? So it's a lot more complex.
so hear me out.
Yeah,
If I have a country,
yeah,
why would I even accept other people into my country? Right? It's like having a home. I have my children. I don't need any more outside children per se. Right? So Do you have any insight into why immigration is important for a country?
Of course, Rod.
I mean,
The United States. Think about how the United States was created.
mhm,
If you go back throughout history, it wasn't a heavy populated country of people from all different countries and origins like the way that it is today. Over time, people from different countries, different continents came to the United States. And as they came over here, they brought their different skills, talents, perspectives, etc., and they came together to make the United States what it is today. The United States also needed workers. It needed people to develop this country. It needed people
mm,
to set up homes. It needed trade. It needed to, work with other countries. And how can you do that if you don't have people here? And if you don't open it up to people of different countries, who are you going to get to come into this country? So part of it is just intuitively it makes sense. We're not talking about, let's say, countries in Europe or in Asia where you have
mhm.
predominantly, or Africa, predominantly people from that country that were born there, etc. The United States, originally, the Native Americans were over here, but the rest of us, we came over time. And the reason for that is this country is so huge and vast. And as the economy developed, as infrastructure developed, as culture developed, it needed people, it needed skills, it needed tools to create the country and make it what it is today. And that's why immigration is so important. And to this day, it's still so important.
So that's interesting. So if I can contextualize that, you know, going back to our founding fathers, we knew part of the advancement of our country was supplementing skills, labor, resources, human capital, intellectual capital from other places, right?
Yeah, and then also, how did the United States come to be? People started coming over here. You had Christopher Columbus, who supposedly originally discovered North America, but it was actually, I think, Vasco da Gama, right? If I go back to my U.S. history, and then
Mm-hmm.
you have the colonists come over here to the United States, who formed the original 13 colonies because they were seeking freedom from taxation, right? Back in the United Kingdom. So, originally in history and different historical periods, people came to the United States seeking freedom, seeking a new opportunity to restart their lives. The United States was also a place that a lot of different countries sent people that they imprisoned, right? Because they did not want to keep them in their country.
Wait a
So
minute,
they
wait a
sent
minute,
them
wait a
over.
minute.
Yes.
I didn't hear you. Are you saying the
Yeah.
United States was a hub for others countries criminals to some extent?
I'm saying that in history, you see that you have European countries and other countries where they sent over people with criminal violations, etc.,
Wow.
overseas to their colonies. You also have this with Australia. Like, it's deeply known for being originally a penal colony. The United
Mhm.
Kingdom sent people over there. So immigration started off with a way of people coming to the United States for two different reasons. One was a start, freedom, home, etc. Another was a place to just send people. There's limited place and resources in these countries, predominantly Europe that we're talking about, right, in the
Mm.
beginning of time. And then the United States is a
Yeah.
vast land with untapped resources. So you start sending people over, and it's all a variety of different things without laws and regulations. And then as more people come over, as the country develops, you need laws to come into place to regulate not just day to
Ah,
day, not just day to day transactions, but also how are people coming in? How do these people now have rights?
gotcha.
Because originally everybody has the same rights. Nobody's telling someone you are a US citizen, you are not a US citizen. But when the population becomes dense and then you want to provide resources as a country to people, now you have to start regulating who do we determine gets these rights and who doesn't? Who do we allow in and who do we keep out?
Oh wow. So I didn't know that. I'm a more of a finance guy, but what you're saying is immigration was happening. We just didn't legalize it yet. And at some
Yeah.
point, immigration as we know it constitutionally, it was a response to something that was already happening that was unregulated. Right? Is
Yeah,
that
immigration law developed with historical events taking place. So, for example, an important one is talking about birthright citizenship.
Okay.
Birthright citizenship didn't just come from anywhere. This was established in 1868 with the 14th Amendment, and this was related to the Dred Scott decision in 1857. So the Dred Scott case is where a couple they filed lawsuits with the government for their freedom while they were still enslaved and living in a free territory. And this decision said that people who were of African descent were denied citizenship even though they were born over here.
Mm,
But with the 14th Amendment, it was the 14th Amendment was basically to make up for this, right? To acknowledge all of these people in the United States who were enslaved, who were born over here, and were treated as second class citizens or not even as citizens. They
hmm.
weren't given the rights of all these other people that were born over here. And so the 14th Amendment said that no, everybody who was born here in the United States has a right to citizenship, a birthright to citizenship.
Oh,
And
wow.
so this was overturning that Dred Scott decision and basically apologizing in a way for saying that all these people that we enslaved and who we said were almost not recognizing, as at the same level as everybody else in the
Yeah.
United States, saying that this is not acceptable. Anyone who's born here has the right to citizenship.
Wow. I'm avoiding getting into current affairs, right?
Right.
But now it makes more sense why I hear the statements that I'm hearing. What led you to go into immigration and not corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions, or what led you here?
Rod, we didn't have 6 hours. I mean, this is always a important question for me because it
Hmm.
wasn't just like I woke up one day and decided that I wanted to be an immigration attorney. It's a longer story, and I think the dots kind of connect together. I myself am an immigrant. I was born in Bangladesh, and I came here when I was very very young. And there are different components to this. As I was growing up, I saw my dad petitioning for his siblings, and I saw the struggle that he went through trying to figure it out. And I didn't fully understand all the nuances, but I just knew that it was like very frustrating and something so important for the family to figure out. And at that time, I thought this is not something that I want to do. So this is when I was maybe 12, very young, teenage years. Fast forward, going to college. I went to an all women's college. And I think this is really when my advocacy background started to develop. And I saw myself as a leader and wanting to advocate for other people. And during the year between my junior year and senior year, I went to Bangladesh to do a fellowship. And originally, I was supposed to do a research on the uh, what is it called? The nationalism of Bangladesh and looking at the origin history of Bangladesh because I was an anthropology major and I was looking at that. But when I was in Bangladesh, I went by myself. I stayed in my grandparents' village,
Hmm.
and I went there for 3 months. And mind you, this is going as an adult. The last time I had gone was probably when I was 12 or something.
Hmm.
And it was very different. I was spending all this time with the women in the kitchen, and there was a bit of a boundary between how the men operated and how the women operated. The men in the family went to work, they stayed outdoors, the women stayed home, they worked in the kitchen. And when I initially said I wanted to do field work, they were kind of laughing at me because what is field work? In the
Yeah.
US and anthropology, we know that what field work is. It consists of going and doing research. But for them, they're like, oh, do you want to go work in the actual field? And I said, no, that's not what it really is. So it was a very interesting experience because I had to create this dynamic and navigate new relationships with the different people in the village, coming in as an outsider, but also the daughter of someone that they knew. And
Yeah.
over the course of a month or so, I established a certain relationship where I was able to establish myself as independent and garner some level of respect. However, halfway into the summer, my parents came to visit. And the second that my dad returned, all of a sudden I was no longer Sumaya, the independent woman there doing her
Yeah.
field work. I was the daughter of so and so, and I
Uh-huh.
had to abide by traditional guidelines. I had to go back and stay
Oh.
with my dad in our traditional home because that was the respectable thing to do. No one cared that I had a project that I had to
Yeah.
finish, right?
Yeah.
That I
Yeah.
was there for something else. And I found myself in a situation where I don't want to go too much into the details, where I felt I had no power. I couldn't make a single decision without some male member of my family approving it. I couldn't go anywhere without a male relative taking me,
Hmm.
all for the purpose of protecting me and because of my identity as a woman and the daughter of so and so. And this is really where I started thinking about my future and my career and what do I want to do. And I realized that I never want to be in that kind of position ever again, where somebody else is going to dictate for me when I can leave the house or
Yeah.
when I can
Yeah.
do what. And I realized that the way that the women navigate power and the relationships with men in society is very, very nuanced. And at that time, I wanted to be an anthropologist. I wanted to go into academia. But I realized that if I actually want to affect some change for these women or for myself or anyone else, I need to pursue
Uh,
something where I know what all my rights are, what the laws are, and that I
mm,
can navigate around that and no one is going to tell me what to do. So that's what led me to go to law school and decide
gotcha.
I want to be a lawyer. And I'm finishing up the story because the dots are connected. It's not
Yes.
always just a direct thing. And
Sure.
then when I went to law school, I said to myself, I'm never doing immigration law because I grew up with that and I don't want to deal
Yeah.
with the headache of that.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want to do criminal law either because, I don't have the mindset for that. So then in law school, all I did was criminal law. I interned at the Brooklyn DA's office, the legal aid. I
Yeah.
went to Australia for 2 summers. I worked for a
Uh-huh.
barrister there, a youth legal center. And so I thought it was all criminal law and that's what I was going to do. And my last year, I was all set to do the criminal justice clinic, but there was something missing, Rod. Like there was
Sure.
just something there. And at the
Uh-huh.
last minute, I remember when I was filling out that form for the clinics, the legal clinics, something made me change my mind. And I just put down immigration clinic. I just put that down. And then I got into the immigration clinic and that just changed my life. Like the
Yeah.
missing component was the people component, the working
Uh,
with people from all different backgrounds, the
mhm.
stories, and this also brought in my interdisciplinary background from the anthropology because immigration law, so much of practicing it is telling people stories and using the law to help them get to where they need to go. So, long story, Rod, but this is the journey of, becoming a lawyer and why I wanted to do
No,
immigration law.
it's important because the show's called The Playbook, right? And the
Yeah,
goal is to help inspire someone, educate and inspire, and figure out your own pathway, but have a role model that looks like us that we can hear from and say, "Oh, okay, I may not have to have it all figured out at some
yeah.
point, but the dots do connect, and there is a story, there is a personal story that connects you to your future." If you want it to be alignment with passion and purpose, so that's amazing. I remember we had a conversation, and I don't know if you can touch on it now, but we knew now, and what's happening was that as people were re-entering the country, some people were being stopped. I don't want to get too into the grain, but
Yeah,
you said to me the law is being tested right now, that different
yeah,
laws
yeah,
are being applied in different cases,
yeah.
um, for the sake of almost rewriting the law. And the limited amount that I know about the law is there a precedent? And once a precedent is established, it almost changes the application of the intent. So I don't know if you remember that conversation, but could you educate me a little bit more or educate our audience on, what were you thinking when you were saying that to me?
Sure. So, if you look at the history of constitutional law, everything kind of builds over time. One case kind of builds on another, and the cases are kind of informed by what goes on at that time, like historically, or just as whatever is going on now is
Hmm.
informing our case law, and 20 years from now, that's what is going to be the law. So, for example, I think right now, there are certain powers that Congress has, and there are certain laws that are being tapped into and used in a way that were not the original intent of Congress. So, one example is the Alien Enemies Act that is being used right now. And this originally came from the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798, which were
Wow.
repealed. And the only thing that remained was this one act, the Alien Enemies Act. And the last time that this was used was by President Roosevelt during World War II. What this act says is that it gives the president wartime power to detain, restrain, or remove or impose limitations on people from certain countries that we perceive to be a threat to the safety and welfare of the United States.
Oh.
So, key thing here is warfare, right? During a critical moment in time. And this was almost, while this was justified, right, and used by President Roosevelt during World War II, because there was a wartime going over there, it was also misused because this was used explicitly against people from Italy, Japan, um, and Germany. And then it was also used to put a lot of Japanese people in concentration camps. And this is a part of our U.S. history that's not that great. And so now we see this law being used again to justify the detention of people where there is no basis to detain them. And one example of this is, of course, the Mahmoud Khalil case, right? This is something that the Secretary of State stated as the basis for the detention. But Rod, this is something that is supposed to be used in times of warfare, and it's not really justified in this case. So we see the government currently taking this law and expanding its intent
Mm.
and the definition and making it broader than what it was intended to be used for. And this is just one example of the law. Another thing that's very important right now, I'll let you.
No, 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 no. I'm amazed at this. But
Yeah,
good, nothing. I
yeah,
want to hear more.
yeah, yeah. Another thing that's very important and that's related to immigration law is the plenary power doctrine. So this goes back to giving the government broad, like almost unchecked authority over a specific area of law without judicial review. And there's a bit of a history that's tied to this, but the US government is currently using this during this time right now. And you're seeing it in several of the lawsuits that are going on, where they are saying that it is the government and its executive, they get to decide what is going to be the law, and other branches of the government should not have an input into this. So we're seeing the government really utilizing certain laws that are broad and using that to implement certain policies that are not favorable towards people who are here without status, and also overriding certain protections that were given to non-immigrant, to immigrants who are here without status. So, for example, the U.S. Constitution states that both citizens and non-citizens have the right to due process. And in this case called Yamada v. Fisher in 1903, the Supreme Court stated that even non-citizens facing deportation are entitled to some level of due process. We see now here that there are various people that are being that were deported and removed from the United States without due process. And Rod, this is a fundamental right that citizens and non-citizens have. There were various case laws, one after the other, that cemented this right. And for the government to just go and kind of take these actions, not respecting the law and constitutional rights that non-citizens have, raises questions as to the validity of the Constitution and the power of the Constitution, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. As I'm hearing you,
Yeah.
and again, I'm not a legal expert, but I wanted to have this conversation and bring you on. As I'm hearing you, my mind is saying so immigration is almost being weaponized as a way to expand the power of the executive office.
Yes.
Almost, and if we do it here, it's going to bleed into other areas beyond just immigration. So, and I think this is what our audience needed to understand was, you may feel it doesn't have to do with you,
Yes.
but one way or another, this can impact you. So that brings me to my next question, and I don't know if there's an answer with it. With looking at people that are non, naturalized citizens or not citizens, they're here. Uh, how does immigration law impact universally our civil rights? I think you touched on due process
Yeah,
for people that are not citizens, but I'm assuming if you can throw someone out that and not give
yeah.
them due process, what could you do something to someone that is a citizen here, right? Like, so I don't know if there is any overlap to civil rights as a whole for our country.
Well, Rod, absolutely, because the Fifth Amendment says it's not just citizens but also non-citizens that have due process, right? And then the 14th Amendment is the one that gives birthright citizenship to everyone. Currently there are talks of denaturalizing people, right? And many of the immigration policies to justify removal or deportation of people is based on them, let's say, committing certain criminal violations, et cetera, whatnot. But the reality of what we're seeing here is that there are actually people, in fact, being removed from the United States who don't have any criminal violations, or who are being detained who don't have any criminal violations. We
How?
do have, uh, how? Because the
Yeah,
law is not being followed. The
there
law
you
is
go.
not being followed. So the law is one thing, enforcement is another. The government has a responsibility. The executive, the legislative, the judicial branch, they have a responsibility to uphold the Constitution. And we see now here this responsibility not being carried out. So I think that it is concerning that if the Constitution isn't being upheld and it's not actually being, the law is actually not being applied, US citizens have a right to be concerned. If denaturalization is being discussed as something that could happen, like an everyday thing, instead of something that happens in extraordinary circumstances related to criminal violations or criminal history, how does this not create concerns for everybody who's a US citizen? What is the basis for starting denaturalization proceedings for someone?
That's a good question, right? Like, when are you actually considered a citizen?
Right.
Right, especially in,
Yeah.
so fun fact, because my sister just explained
Yeah.
this one to me, because I'm a first generation American,
Yeah.
and I was just with her over the weekend, and she was like, "You have to be concerned. I don't, because our parents, when I was born, they weren't U.S. citizens. When she was born, they were. So under, I guess, this new
Mm.
that I am someone, I guess, if I committed a criminal violation, that I can possibly be removed from the United States, even though I was born here and I'm a contributing member to society."
Well, it's the way the law works is you can't just be removed just because you committed a crime. There are protections in place. So they would have to, the what is it called, the government would have to initiate denaturalization proceedings either in a criminal or civil proceeding, and first take away, and it's, I mean, your green card and your permanent residency, right? So they have to denaturalize you. Then they need to establish, when I say take away, they need to establish you obtained your green card somehow through fraudulent means or
Yeah.
some other violations, etc. So there has to be a proceeding in place to take that away from you. It's not like they can just target someone and say, for whatever reason, let's say you spoke out against the government or spoke
Hmm.
out against some policy not supported by the government, that they can just institute a proceeding and take away your citizenship. There actually have to be procedures in place. This is where the due process comes into
I
play.
was just saying
If,
that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, right? So due process isn't just limited to removing people or detaining them. It also comes into naturalization. It also comes into, let's go to your other rights to an attorney, for example. Um, Non-citizens don't have the right to an attorney in immigration proceedings. But everybody has a right to an attorney in criminal proceedings. So, what happens for US citizens then? How does the law change? Do we lose that right? So, I think, Rod, it's a bit of a slippery slope. Not everything changes overnight. But the important thing here is that the Constitution must be respected and the laws have to be upheld. To take away or saw at it, I guess, at the Constitution, you do it one case at a time, one right at a time. You start with one class of people, and then it becomes more broadly applied to a larger group of
Wow.
people.
Wow. This was so, and this is the conversation I wanted to have, right? Because we just, I mean, what I'm walking away with is immigration just isn't about getting someone into the country. It's about the actual principles of the Constitution and how these three bodies work and what are your legal, what are your rights
Yeah.
as a human being. Um, so as we get to wind down, and I didn't even get a chance to talk about extraordinary people and the things that you do,
Okay.
but I will give you an opportunity to kind of explain your practice to everyone. Uh, what is one common myth people have about
Um,
immigration law? If you don't mind touching on that.
I think there are various myths, but I think the important one that I want to share with
Hmm.
is people think immigration law consists of just filling out forms. And immigration law is so much more complex than filling out forms. There are so many different laws that go into all these variety of different procedures for different types of reliefs and visas, etc., that are available for people. And most people are only familiar with like family petitions and citizenship. And they're not aware that there are people in this country that go through complex processes, through coming in, getting doing a bond hearing, to then having to appear before an immigration judge. There are various waivers and things. So it's very complex
Correct.
and
Yeah.
nuanced. So I think that's one myth that I'd like to debunk, that immigration law is not just filling out forms. It's a series of laws that informs all these complex scenarios to help people figure out a solution to whether they can be in this country or they can enter in this country,
Hmm.
or they can also ultimately get a green card and citizenship.
One of the things, and this was through your practice,
Yeah.
that I started realizing was, um, again, the way it's projected in media is one thing, but realizing that you have a slew of talented people, doctors, scientists from other countries that go through the immigration process that actually creates value for the United States. Um, and these people are pursuing, again. If you can enlighten us on this type of visa and the application of it.
Sure. So there are non-immigrant visas and there are immigrant visas. Whenever I talk to someone about immigration, I feel like I need to give a lowdown, but I'm not going to do that. What you need to know is that there are some temporary work visas that people utilize to come into the United States to work for a limited number of
Wow.
years, and then there are visas that leads to a green card. Many people come here on
Oh.
temporary. Many people come here usually on temporary work visas,
Mhm.
and then their employer or they themselves self petition for a visa that leads to a green card. And some people are directly able to apply for the green card, the visa base that leads to a green card, depending on the eligibility. So there are various types of employment visas. So there are non-immigrant ones, such as like O1s, which are for people who are considered extraordinary in their field. And this is something that we focus on and specialize on. And then another one that a lot of people know about, which is the H-1B. The H-1B has been used as it's a common visa used as a source of talent to bring in foreign talent to work for people in a variety of different industries, as long as they have a bachelor's degree and the job requires a bachelor's degree. I'm simplifying it, but that's the
Sure,
gist of
sure.
it. However, it's a visa where there's a quota. There's only 85,000 visas available per year, and hundreds and thousands of people apply in a lottery system, and only a few get selected. So this means that a lot of times people are not able to, secure positions to work here and have the visa to do so. Or even if they secure a position, they can't actually start work because they don't have the visa. So they have to think about alternative visas such as the O1, and there's something else called an L1 visa. So there are a variety of different non-immigrant temporary work visas. I'm not going to go into all of them, but they provide different pathways for people to come
Mhm.
here. Another one for you to know, because not a lot of people know about this, is the TN visa, which is for Canadian citizens and Mexican citizens under a treaty that we have with Canada and Mexico. although I don't know if that will change in the future, where certain professions are allowed to come into the United States and the pathways kind of streamlined a little bit and a little bit more efficient
Hmm.
because we have this treaty and we recognize these
Yeah.
to be professions that we need people in.
Hmm.
So, Rod, I just want to go back and say that the United States has created all these different visas and pathways for people to come and work here because the truth of the matter is we need talented people. The United States is made up of talented people from all over the world. We all contribute to making this country amazing. That's what led the United States to be great. And sometimes there are people who come from backgrounds where they're not fortunate enough to have resources, but they have a hunger and they have a drive and they have the will to, to work hard. And it's these people that come to the United States who will contribute either during their generation or they have kids who then grow up to contribute back to the United States. And I think we need to remember that, especially in this time when people of specific backgrounds are being targeted, and we're saying that, oh, we have a lot of immigrants in this country and we need to, remove a lot of them from the United States. We need to factor that in. The solution is not to remove everyone. The solution is to come up with a system where we can benefit from people
Mm.
here and a system that's fair that factors that in. I think we need to think long term. How can the United States prosper and benefit? How can we nurture talent and opportunities so that the United States reaps the benefits several years
Mm.
from now instead of just with a blanket turn everybody away or remove them from the United States?
Wow, wow. We definitely have to have you back because this this whole time I- I've been thinking of these visas as immigration. So even just for you, which is simple, I never even made the distinction of the green card visa, and so that's very powerful. And what you said in the end makes absolutely sense. How do we create a system that we benefit from this, right? So before we let you go, tell us a little bit about Khalique Law, what you specialize in, so our audience, if they want to follow you, they can, and then well, thank you.
Sure. So at Khalique Law, one of the things we specialize in are these O1 visas, but we also do business immigration overall, so the non immigrant temporary work visas and the green card based ones. We, of course, also do family petitions because that is the core of immigration law, keeping families together. We also do citizenship and my passion, asylum cases. So I love to work with people who are filing for asylum based on gender, what is called sexual orientation, race, religion, so political asylum. So that's something that I'm very, very passionate about. So
Wow.
we work with people from that background as well. And to highlight what I really my expertise is that we also work with some very complicated cases. So sometimes people have cases that aren't straightforward, and my job is to assess the background of your immigration history, look at the various factors in your case, and see if I can come up with a solution for you. Sometimes it could be something we figure out in a year, and sometimes it takes us like 5 years, but we ultimately will figure it out if we are able to.
Well, Samaya, thank you so much, my friend, my colleague. This has been a great episode. I learned a lot. I think we achieved our goal, which to take this beyond just family petition and really bring a legal framework to understanding why immigration is important. The construct of how it was almost birthed, no pun intended, right? And where we are now and how do we get to a solution. And again, I extend an open invitation to have you back so we can get a little bit more into specifics of certain types of visas so that we can actually give people some tips and tricks for how to do this with their families. Samaya, once again, thank you, thank you, and thank you. We'll have you back.
Thank you, Rod, so much. This was such a pleasure, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
I'm Coach Rod. Thanks for tuning in to the Playbook. If you got value from this episode, like, comment, and subscribe. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. Catch you next time.